Before we get into Andrea's birth story today, one of the things that I love about doing a podcast are the tidbits of information that come before we actually start the recording and the ones after we've actually ended the recording. I always have my guests come in with the recording going as we're getting things set up, and then afterwards until we actually sign off. And those are when some of the best moments happen. No one's expecting them. They just pop up. So in this episode, you're going to get a double ending of what we recorded before the podcast began because it had some really good stuff in it and I just couldn't edit it out for you guys. So stay tuned for a little bit extra at the end. Welcome to the Birth Education Center podcast, hosted by myself, Care Messer, an entrepreneur, birth educator, and doula. My team and I want to help you discover your options in birth and postpartum, how to find your voice, and how to use that voice to navigate our maternal healthcare system. You and your baby are not just a number. This information includes doulas too. Now let's get started. I'm excited you're here. Andrea took our classes in May of 22, and we've been trying to do this for a year.
Yes.
And I actually talked to her, I want to say 2 weeks before the baby came.
Yes, 2 weeks.
Was it about 40 weeks?
I was about 40 weeks the first time. Well, we spoke right at the very beginning when I was like 15 weeks pregnant. And then we spoke again 2 weeks before the delivery. And then the day before.
That's right. I love when parents call me super, super early. I just met somebody in the grocery store today and he's like, I know you from the videos. I didn't take your class. I took Ashley's, and he said, you talked to me when my baby was 5 weeks along. And as soon as he said his name, I was like, yeah, and those are the best kind. Cause I feel like we get to get that relationship and nurturing the whole time. So always the earlier, the better, but Juan can't be here today and the baby is quiet. So we're going to record the birth story, and Andrea delivered during I would love to say the end of COVID, but is that ever going to be a thing? And it was tricky. What COVID did for birth was show us that we have to go with the flow and that we have to depend on ourselves and that we have to connect with the innate knowing that we already have and fight the fear, literally complete the birth cycle with love instead of fear. And I'm finding that my family's learned so much during that time. And I think we all connected so deeply because we needed each other so much. So anyway, I'm really excited you're here. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
What I would like to start with is, what did you do to prepare? Like we talked early, and I think I told you to have sex with your husband.
Yes, of course.
And keep that relationship going throughout the whole time. And what did you start with? So did you come in with fears and worries? And then what did you do ahead of time before classes and stuff?
So ahead of class, before classes, I started doing lots of walking and listening to audiobooks that would be working on mindfulness and just would keep me calm and kind of present in the moment. That was my go-to when I was feeling a little bit anxious or nervous or had any fears. I would just go out and take a walk. I kept up with exercising. I heard lots of podcasts, and I started looking at finding the hypnobirthing classes. And once I did, I hooked up on the meditations you guys gave us. Were great for me. Every night I would listen to them since the very beginning. And I wish I would listen to them now because they are very powerful in helping you connect with your own inner peace.
We're not really used to connecting with that. Our lives are so busy, so hustle bustle, and we're always trying to get the next thing done. And pregnancy is meant to reflect and to come back. And it's also a mourning period, right? Of letting go of your old life, your old body. Your relationships are changing. Like there's so much good. And then there's also a real grieving process that a lot of times we don't recognize. And that meditation and slowing down is meant to get you ready for when you're laying down with a baby on your chest. And you have to slow down, because if you're anxious about, I have to get the dishes done and I have to do this and I have to do that, that baby's nervous system isn't going to regulate because you're so anxious about, I have to do.
Yes.
And those are the most beautiful parts of parenthood, is not doing and sitting and smelling and just soaking that in. And I think COVID did give us a little more insight.
Absolutely. And now that you mention it, yes, I'm definitely thankful that I had those tools already in me since the pregnancy, because now he's crawling around and there's just a lot more going, and you still have to cook and you still have to do dishes, but just always coming back to your own home is your own body, your own mind, like getting that connection and just taking a deep breath and being present and always being thankful that you can be there for them. And I think that's something you have to definitely work on, hopefully even before being pregnant. But for some of us, it starts when you get pregnant.
Absolutely. And in our hypnobirthing classes, a little difference in them is that we do a deep dive into the power centers or your chakras. We call them power centers because if you're connecting from the top, which is your spiritual connection to baby, you're using your intuition in connecting with the surroundings that keep you and the baby safe. And then right in class number 1, we are really hitting the voice, finding your voice, developing your voice, understanding where it hasn't been heard and how to make it heard. And I think we kind of hit that every single week because that is the number one thing I think parents are discovering, that they are the ones in charge
Yes.
here. It's not grandma, it's not grandpa, it's not doctor, it's not their friends, it is not each other. It is your guidance and your intuition that you already have. You have all of that stuff inside, and learning to trust that again. Super important.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so you did books, you did podcasts, you started practicing early with your
Yes.
meditations. And then tell me what happened around 40 weeks, because I
Oh,
remember.
yes, 40 weeks. You're super excited about it was our first child, so you're just in love with the idea of getting to meet them and then you have a due date and oh man, those words are tough. Like in the class, you're told, no, there's no due date. Your baby's going to be ready when they're ready. They choose their birth date and everything. But, society gives you a due date and you have family and friends that love you, but they also ask about when's the baby going to come?
Constantly.
And you appreciate it, but it's hard when you're the one there like waiting. And that waiting game was difficult. It's not gonna lie. It was long. Every minute counted, and you're like, when are you coming out? Like we're so ready. Room's ready. Everything's ready. Um,
Except for the
except for
baby,
you.
the actual
Yes.
baby.
All we need is you. But again, it's just coming back to being present and saying, take a deep breath. You've gone through more than 9 months, and it's going to happen. And I remember that's when I was panicking and I reached out to you and to Amy, which was the one who gave the class. And you were the angel that called me that night and were like, you're not going to be pregnant forever. And I remember just writing it all down and being like, oh, she's so right. And you were telling me you trusted your body the whole process. You have to trust that it's going to happen. And they were starting to telling me, okay, well, you're going to hit 41 weeks on Saturday. We talked on Thursday, and I was hitting 41 weeks on Saturday. And they said, we have to do a non-stress test. We have to make sure baby is doing well. And if not, of course, we'll have to do an induction. And I was like, oh my God, I want a spontaneous unmedicated birth. Like, why are they talking about induction? I started to freak out. And they told me, oh, you have like half an inch and like nothing is happening. You're not dilating. Like your body's not doing what it's supposed to do. Like all these words were at that last visit before I was turning 41 weeks.
Which is the worst, because let's defeat you before we talk you into an induction,
Exactly.
right? Obviously, I'm not ready at this moment, and neither is my
Right.
baby. I will not stay pregnant
Yes.
forever. Like, there is not a person on the planet who has stayed pregnant
Right.
forever. But we love that. That's why we include the induction
Yes.
class, because everyone is offered an induction.
Oh my
Everyone.
God.
Unless your baby just magically shows up before one of those appointments.
Exactly. And I just kept reminding myself, no, this is not the way we thought or we planned it. And I know you have to be flexible, and I know with birth you just have to go with it, and it's going to go the way it has to go. But just being like just trusting that your body knows what to do in that moment was like I needed care to tell me again and remind me at that moment where I was panicking that yes, I had to come back to my body. I had to trust it. And it didn't matter if I had have a fingertip of dilation, that baby was going to be ready at the time that he was going to be. And so it did. The next day I got a massage and I went to a chiropractor, and at like 10 p.m. or so, I had like a big contraction And I was like, whew, this was strong. And then I didn't want to believe that it was the day because I had been having like some contractions throughout the whole week and nothing had happened. So I was like, who knows? This is maybe another one of those Braxton contractions. And I just didn't say anything. I didn't tell my husband anything. I didn't tell my mom, who was here to help us, anything. And I was like, I'm just gonna sit here and see if this is the real thing. We'll all find out.
I like that. Your labor denial is not a bad thing. Like if you can coast on that till the very end, I am so okay
Yeah,
with
so
that.
we went out for ice cream, and I rarely eat ice cream, but that day I was like, I need to do something different. And I told my husband, let's go for ice cream. And it's like 10 p.m. at night. Who cares? I went and got a lemon and chocolate ice cream, and as soon as I had two licks, I was like, "Ooh, that was another strong contraction. Like, ooh, this was different." So I told him, I think I'm ready. I'm tired. I'm ready to go home. And so we left the ice cream shop and came home, and I sat on the gym ball and I bounced it a little bit. No, I really feel really tired. So I went to bed and I laid for a minute. And then I had this huge contraction, and that got me out of bed.
It's
Yep, it got me
time.
out of bed. I like grabbed onto the sheets, and I was like, "Oh, that hurt!" And then I said it out loud. So my husband was like, "Oh, are you okay?" And I'm like, oh, "I think I'm having like really strong contractions." So that's when it all started. But I really, 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 really had to trust that I wasn't going to go for an induction, and I didn't want to go to the non-stress test. I had to push that back in order to allow my body and my baby to be ready.
And your baby said, nah, I don't need a stress test. And we're not doing an induction because I am
Yep,
coming.
I'm coming. Here I come. And after that first big contraction, I needed to pee, and I had the mucus plug, and I got so freaking scared because I had no idea what it would look like. And it was big, and I was like, oh my God, like this is scary. And, as a first time mommy, I had no idea. And I just saw that in the toilet, and I was like, oh my God, is this the baby? Like, what happened? It's like, I had no idea. And I called my husband, and we were both panicking, and we sent a picture to our doula. And she was like, oh, yay, party's starting. And I was like, oh, okay. Whew, this was nothing. This was just part of the process. Like, calm down. And she's like, yeah, like, you're starting to labor, take it easy, lay down, get some rest, do anything you can. But my contractions were like starting really strong and back to back. And I said, oh, I need to take a little bath. So I got into the shower, and lots of breathing, lots of humming, lots of connection. Everything that I learned in the class, I was able to actually use when I was laboring at home. And kudos to my husband because he did all of the above, like cleaning the mess, like getting towels, like making me feel comfortable, getting me water, like everything. He was just right there next to me the whole time.
It becomes such an intimate
It
experience at
was,
home,
yes.
doesn't it?
Yes, it was our moment. Even like my mom was here and she was in the other room and she didn't even peek in. She just let us do our thing, and I knew that she probably woke up from me like humming and just with the contractions and everything, but she just allowed it to be our time, and it was so, so precious. I really remember it and I smile. It was definitely something that I had prepared for and also that I was envisioning throughout the whole process. And so after taking the shower for a little bit and walking, and then we called the doula once I was like having a lot more pain because since the beginning, my husband was using the contraction tracker, and it was like, go to the hospital, go to the hospital, go to the hospital
Oh, they're the
quickly. And I was like,
worst.
I just started contractions. Like, there's no way. It hurts, yes, but there's no way we're ready to go to the hospital. We just started. And so we did not listen to it. And we just waited and waited. And that was like midnight. And then at 4 in the morning, Laura, our doula, was listening to our contractions and just facing it. And then once I started talking to her and I could not talk, she told me, "Are you ready to go to the hospital?" And I said, "Yes, please, let's go to the hospital." So at that point, I think those were the longest minutes to go up those steps. But there was my husband still like walking with me all the way up. And he said, "What do you need me to take?" And I was like, "I don't care, just the hospital bag. Let's go." And he thought it was going to be a long ride there because I was in pain. But once I got into the car, I grabbed onto the baby's car seat and I swear I fell asleep because I don't remember anything from like the house to the point where my husband told me I am about to pull into like the emergency door for the hospital. And I was like, oh, thank goodness. And I was rested. I had no contractions on the way there. I don't remember a single thing. Just his words of, "We'll be there soon," and then we got here. And I was like, oh, amazing. Yes. I walked in those doors and I had a smile in my face. I was like super pumped. I was rested. I was feeling great. I got there and we told the nurses, "Well, hey, yes, we called that we were coming in. We're ready for delivery." And they saw me so calm and so happy that they're like, "There's no way that she's, ready. She's going to be sent back probably." But once they did the check, she said, "Oh, you're 9 centimeters." And oh my God, those words were like, "You are the happiest 9 centimeter pregnant lady that I've ever seen." And I was like, "That's because I just been waiting for this moment for so long." So I guess those, long days of waiting because I was go past due date and going into like the 41 weeks were worth it because I was just so happy by the time we got there and that nothing else mattered. The only, downside to it, because it's something that I really learned and I will kind of back up when I'm hopefully get another baby on the way. But that once I got into the hospital, I was so connected with myself when I was at home. But once I got to the hospital, I sort of started getting immersed a little bit in that environment and then talking to the nurses. And then they were like asking questions and you knew the answer, but you ended up giving a different answer. For example, like with the monitor, I wanted the wireless one because I wanted to be able to walk. Like I knew that from the classes, but I wasn't told anything. I was just, "Oh, here's the monitor." And then it was put on and I was like stuck to the bed. And so then when my doula was like, go pee, you need to pee. Like, I think it's going to give more space to the baby. And they were like, "Well, you can't stand up because you're hooked to the bed." So these things happened. So everything was like as I envisioned it when I was at home. But once I got to the hospital, it became a little bit more challenging.
Because of COVID, you couldn't have Laura with you. She had to be on the phone or on FaceTime. And that is the tricky part because, other times we're asking the nurse, can we unplug her? She has to go to the
Yes,
bathroom. And we're facilitating that because we do that, right? So,
yes. And she was on the phone trying to tell them, like, let her go to the bathroom. And they were like, "Well, she's just hooked." And I could see them like gossiping between them. Like, we don't want, because I think they were just, since I was, so far along the process that they were just scared that I was going to deliver in the toilet, maybe. I think that's their biggest concern. But I needed to go potty. And at the end, I couldn't get out of bed. So they brought everything. And those little things that I was like, "Oh, I wish that Laura would have been there with us. It would have made it a lot easier." But definitely just always staying connected to what you know it's best for you and for the baby at that moment. But at the end, it was great.
so how many hours between when you got there and like how long were you laboring in the hospital?
So we got there for like 4:30, and then Martin was born at 9:42.
Okay, not
Not
bad.
bad. No, no, not bad at all.
Not bad.
It was from like 0 to 100 really quickly. I think it's all the dates that I ate and like the raspberry tea, the squatting, the sex,
Whatever,
oh,
squats, tea.
everything. We did it all just because we did not want to get that induction or anything. We're like, we're gonna prove them wrong. This baby's coming. So yeah, so at the end, after I started pushing, it was like 2 hours. I did push for a while again because I lost that connection. I want for everybody that will listen to this, like stay connected to your body. And if you know that it will push slowly, like wait for it to push out slowly. Because I was told, oh, push whenever you're ready. And I got like that, like um, sense of, oh, now I'm ready to push. Now I have to push. And it wasn't maybe the time. So maybe I pushed for too long because of that reason.
Because you had everybody in your ear saying, do this, do that, do this, and here's how you do it. Right. I know it's tricky because you're hearing on the outside when you really need to go internal and be like, no, this baby's caught on my hip. I need to move this
Exactly,
way.
exactly. And then
Yeah.
I couldn't get out of bed either. So that was another thing that was like, I wasn't comfortable laying. I wasn't, like, even though if I would lay to the side or lay to, or squat, because they did put a bar and they helped in a lot of ways, but I wish I would have just been free to move around and do whatever I needed to do. So that's something I hope I can achieve in the next round. Um, and then, yeah, but for when he was about to be out in this world, I was crowning, and the nurse was like, "Stop pushing, he's right there." But the OB wasn't in the room yet, and so she said, "You wait, wait, wait! I'm gonna call the doctor." And I was like, "What do you mean I'm gonna call the doctor?" So I kind of panicked in that moment, and I felt like I sucked Martin back in, and then I started telling my husband, "I sucked him back in, I sucked him back in." And then once the OB got into the room, he's like, "Well, I'm here," and I was like, "Oh, great! Now I have to push again." But
You're
that,
like, we would have been done.
yeah, he would have been out already. But we pushed together again, and there he was. It was the best feeling ever once he like just came out, and he was already crying by the time he came out. And we didn't know it was a boy or a girl, so we found out he was a boy. And Dad said, "Oh, it's a boy. His name is Martin." And then we waited for the cord clamping and did a little bit of the skin to skin. So all of that was magical. So we did have to go through some obstacles, but we did it. We did it.
But you did it.
Yes.
And you had a conversation with the nurse afterwards, and I appreciate that you actually talked to her about it, because I think that helps us process when we actually say in the moment how we felt.
Yes.
Can you share with the listeners what you shared with her?
Yes, absolutely. So um it was difficult after Martin was born because he ended up in NICU because he swallowed a little bit of the amniotic fluid and they weren't sure if he was getting enough oxygen. So that was difficult because of, once your baby's born, you just want to be next to them the whole time. And so it was very, very hard to see him have to go to a different room. But as we also learned in class, like Dad would stay with him the whole time. So I was like, Dad, I don't care about me. I'm fine. Like, just go with him, stay with him the whole time. And a part of me thinks that that happened in that moment where that nurse told me, stop pushing, don't push. Like, the OB is not here yet because I sort of panicked. And, I know that that fear probably Martin felt it as well. And I'm sure he probably took a breath and like suctioned the amniotic fluid. But who knows? So I just had that in me. And once we walked out of the hospital, I did have to tell the nurse, I appreciate everything you did for me. You were right there with me. I just want to ask you, why didn't you just catch him? Like, why did you ask me to stop pushing? And she was honest enough, which I appreciate actually, to tell me I was ready to catch him, but I don't get paid for it. The OB gets paid big bucks for it. And those words, I will never forget them because I was like, oh, now you gave me another reason to be even more empowered to connect to myself and know that you just have to follow your body.
And that's a hard thing to hear, that it's paperwork instead of the sacred experience of me following through with where I know I need to connect with my body and my baby and deliver him, like let him be born. But we're going to stop that process because of paperwork.
Yes.
Like there's a huge disconnect, right? Between the system and what's actually happening between human beings.
Yes.
I'm so glad that you had that conversation with her.
Yes.
And maybe it didn't even matter to her.
Right.
Maybe she'll second guess it next time. But for you, it was like, oh, I get it.
Yes.
This has nothing to do with me and what's happening in my family, right?
Yes.
Big eye-opening moment.
It was. And I think she kind of learned a little bit about it too, because I think she was scared once the baby ended up in NICU, because everybody thought everything went so well. And so I think she kind of was worried a little bit that maybe she waited a little too long. I told her, there's a life at risk. So maybe next time just go for it. So I did tell her because I didn't want to keep it to myself.
And I think that vocal processing makes a huge difference.
Yes.
Because so many of us leave the system with all of this stuff bundled up and everyone's like, oh, but the baby's fine now.
Right.
You had a healthy baby.
Right.
And it's all brushed off, but our feelings are still there.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened in our bodies is still there.
Yes, absolutely.
It still needs to be processed.
Yes, absolutely. And that is, I feel like it's also a grieving process when you have to go through NICU. It's a lot. And you see all other babies too. And I was thankful that, Martin was doing well and it was just a little bit of oxygen and everything. But there's also uncertainty. Like you don't know like what's happening. You're not told a whole lot of what's happening. And then you connect with other families that went through, even harder situations or are going through a lot more. And oh, yeah, it was a lot to take in after you were going through a delivery.
It is a lot. I did that 8-day NICU stay. It's not the most pleasant thing on the planet. However, the tools that I learned in hypnobirthing is what got me through it, because I knew how to talk to everybody and connect everybody. And if this was your baby, what would you do? If this was your sister's baby, what would you do? And so I wasn't listening to everybody as a white coat talking down to me. I got on a connection, human level with them.
Yes.
Like, let's be honest here, what's actually happening. And let me talk to you on that level as human to human instead of doctor patient.
Yes. With the classes, you feel more empowered also to know what's best for your kiddo. Because I remember I was told, oh yeah, well, we'll give him formula and we'll do this and that. And there are so many things that it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I knew that my body was producing milk and that Martin was ready to get that was the best thing I could give him, even at NICU, and that's not what I was told by them, but I did stand up and I was like, I know we're not going to give him formula because he can have mommy's milk, like breast milk. This is it. And I, got their eyes and the looks and everything, but I was like, this is what we're doing. Like, even if it takes a little longer. So yeah, even there, I had to fight it a little bit.
I mean, that's the importance of learning what your voice is, where it's been stifled, and how to overcome that while you're before pregnant and pregnant, because you're going to have pediatricians, you're going to have teachers, you're going to be this baby's advocate for 50 years. Like it's a constant thing. And if no one ever stuck up for you, you have an even more innate sense of mama bear of, I will stick up for this child. And I will, if my gut's telling me something different, you're going to hear about it.
Yeah.
And there's ways to do it nicely, but it's a very innate, forceful, and motherly or parenthood, type of voice that needs to come out.
Yeah. And in moments where you're like stressed and you're vulnerable and it's when, you have those tools since the very beginning is when you can actually use them, because otherwise you really don't even know what to do. And you're told so many things.
Well, and your body is the one that's going to be the best read on that.
Yes.
And I don't even know if a lot of people know that your body holds your baby's stem cells in your heart and in your brain. Wow. So scientifically, energetically, you have a read on your kid, which, because we're so connected by energy and love, it's a very powerful connection that we always have with our kid. And, there are times when Finny, no one can figure out anything that's going on with her. And it is an innate, no, it is her bowel or it is this. Mm-hmm. And they're like, and they're blowing me off. And then as soon as they are x-raying or doing something, like, you're right, she had a twist in her bowel. I'm like, okay, I don't even know what that is. I just knew it was that,
yes.
So never underestimate your connection with your kid ever.
Ever. No.
Because it's right. And in postpartum, you need it even more
Yes,
sometimes than you do during pregnancy.
absolutely. And I think that's something that nobody prepares you for. And it's different for everybody, but postpartum is another time where you have to stay connected with yourself and stay connected with your baby, stay connected with your partner and with your body, and learn with the team that you have around, and learn with your baby, and don't follow like guidelines. You be there with them.
Because it's different. It's different with every kid.
Yes.
On your second, it's going to be different than it was with Martin.
Yes.
It's just so it is a gut read every single time. And since we're talking about postpartum, let's move into postpartum.
Yes.
What advice would you give new parents, whether it be postpartum, like, hey, make sure you do this, or, through the education process, the parenting process, or the birth process? What would be your number one advice for them?
My number one advice: communication between partners, resting for sure, which everybody tells you, oh, yes, take some sleep when baby sleeps. And it's so hard because you want to do so many things and you want to have a life, but it's temporary. So that's my word these days. It's temporary. Like, it's not going to stay like this forever. So if those first months you just have that word, it's temporary, everything will flow, and nights are long and you don't sometimes know what you're doing, and it can be challenging, but if you just remind yourself it's temporary, like, you'll have a blast.
I like how you said communication, because communication dissolves without sleep. Like, your frontal cortex can't even function.
Yes.
And it is so important to sleep, even if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, because you'll fall asleep on the toilet.
Yes.
You're so tired postpartum. And every bit of that counts for both people, because you'll run out of communication skills if your neocortex isn't working.
Yes.
So yes, communication, and as much rest as possible. If there are people willing to hold that baby so you can sleep,
Yes.
at any point, it is so important to ask for help before even you've had the baby, but definitely after.
Yes, and then the same, like, it's so short, and it can be those 3 months. I tell my friends that are having babies now, it's those 3 months, just forget about everything else. Just be there for yourself, for your family, for your baby. Everything else will still be there. It's not going anywhere. Take the time, because it goes by so fast and nobody gives it back, and it goes away, and they grow up, and you go through all the stages, and you were just wanting that time, or wanting to have that baby for so long, and you had it for 9 months or 10 months, and now it's there. So take advantage of it, and take it all in, soak it all in, because I think it's hard. We're like, oh no, and I still have to still do the laundry, and still have to cook, and I still have to see my friends, and I still have to call everybody, and oh my God, I work and all these things. But if you could just save some time to come back home, be with your own body, mind, baby, and connect, and share it with your partner too. Be like, feel sad today, I have no reason why, but I feel lonely, or I feel tired, or just cranky, anything. Express it and share it, because I think it just makes everybody's day better.
Well, and partners are the same way.
Yes.
If you're expressing, it gives them room to express, because a lot of times we're so focused on your healing that we don't ask partners what they experienced, And sometimes, like, the NICU stay for him might have been really uncomfortable, and he might have been fearful. No one's asking him about that.
Yes.
Right? How's the baby doing?
Yes.
How's mom doing? And it's key to let them express as much as they will or can, but to talk it through. Like, it's okay to say you were scared. It's okay to say, that you felt unequipped in that moment.
And then it's okay to cry too. Yes, because as new parents, you have that, no, you have to be happy because your baby is doing well and you're home and they're healthy and everything's going well. Like, you shouldn't cry. But there's just so much going on that it's fine for you to cry, and it's fine for you to be like, oh man, how am I going to do this? And like, have some doubts. It'll go away. Again, it's temporary.
But talk about them, express it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
we all do. It is not, life is not a Pinterest board,
Right.
and it is not what everybody shows on Instagram. Like, good for you for being 5 days postpartum and doing laundry and squats in your front room
Yes.
and, you know, nursing at the same time and pumping from the other boob. Like, that's amazing. And it's all for show
Yes.
because that is not sustainable.
No.
Yeah, it'll last for the photo shoot,
Yeah,
right? The mini
exactly.
video you're putting together. It's a 30-second reel, folks. It's not actual reel, like reality. And here's the second ending I promised you without the edits. You're coming into the conversation with Andrea talking about the worst parts of having a baby during COVID and what she most wanted you to know about her finding her voice at the end of her hospital stay.
Laboring at home was a big thing for me.
That's so important.
Yes.
And so many people choose induction and then they just skip right over that, right?
Yes. Well, a big thing for me was not having like the doula with us.
That was the suckiest part of that whole
Yes.
thing. But was Laura, like, she was on FaceTime or whatever
She
with you
was on the
guys?
phone, yes. But still, like when I went to crowning, and I don't know if you know that part, but like the nurse told me don't push, and he was like out, like I could feel him like out, completely out. And I looked at my husband, and I was like, "What does she mean I can't push?" Like, and then I freaked out and I sucked him back in, and I started still telling him, "I sucked him back in, I sucked him back in," and I freaked out, and then I had to push again and for him to come out. And at the very end, the nurse was honest enough to tell me, "I did not let you push because I was ready to catch him, but I am not supposed to catch him because I don't get paid for it." And I like was in tears. And I think that's why he like ended up having fluid in his lungs. I feel like when I suctioned him back in, he was ready to breathe and he probably took a breath. And
Pulled that lung stuff in.
yes,
Yeah, it's fuckery because the nurses, if they call the doctor too early, they get in trouble. If they call the doctor too late and they catch, then the doctor has to get all this paperwork signed so they actually get all the insurance money from your whole pregnancy.
oh, I didn't know that.
You know what? That's what it's like. We need more training with nurses so that we're not like, you're actually interrupting one of the most sacred and important processes for babies and parents.
Yes,
It's a physiological thing. You don't stop it because of fucking paperwork.
exactly, exactly. And that's what I told her at the end. I was like, it was a life like you had in your hands. Like if that something would have gone even worse, like I would have felt that that was the reason for it.
Absolutely. No, and that's a good thing to say,
Yes.
like if you need to push and you're feeling
Yes,
like it, you
do
follow your
yes,
body,
yes.
right?
And I think that's one thing that for me was like the biggest, and if I like for hopefully for the next child, if we get to have another kiddo, is that I learned that like if you don't fully always stay connected to your body and then start listening to what the hospital does, but you know like what you need to do. And if you start listening to them, then you get confused and you forget of because I was sure that when I was ready to push, I had to push, but then I stopped myself because I was listening to what she was saying. So kind of like always trusting that you know what you're doing. So I think for me was that like I got a little bit disconnected from what I knew was best because I started getting like immersed into the hospital. And I think that's the biggest part with the laboring also at home is like because you are in your own sacred space. And if once you go into the hospital, you kind of jump into their setting and you feel like you can't do what you really like.
And isn't it amazing because it's just an office building.
Yes,
The hospital is literally an office building.
I know.
But we go in there and we're like, I can't eat, I can't drink, I
Yes,
can't pee, I can't push when I need to. And it's like, I think that's one of the reasons it's important to labor at
yes,
home because you build your confidence with every single surge. And if you get there at the end, you're like, F it, leave me alone. And you just do it, and second time moms have that
yes,
confidence, if they've done it right before, majority, especially if they were educated the first time. And yeah, it's just, it's so tricky.
yes.
Excited.
Okay, yes, that's I think one of the biggest things for me that to share. Okay. Ooh, and at some point I would love to hear how you started with birthing center and everything because I you're totally inspiring.
It started probably at my birth.
Yeah.
Everything you're supposed to do, you're going to find, and you can either pick it up or leave it.
Yeah.
But if you have a
Yeah.
dream, it's meant for you.
Yeah.
That means that it's attainable. And we're led to the path we're supposed to be on, because I worked at an asphalt company before I did birth work.
Wow.
I just
Yeah.
didn't think I would ever be a birth worker. I was terrified of birth. So
Wow.
yeah. And then when you look back that you're like, oh, you
Yeah.
can streamline it. And birth, my actual birth, is what kicked me into it.
Yes, and I think that's when I'm going through, it's like I want to do a project, and I'm like, oh, maybe I can talk to Care about it to see how she got started, because I don't know where to start. But it's not about birth, but more about like after birth, and
Yeah,
more like that
absolutely. We need more
development.
help with postpartum.
Yeah, more like the towards like development of the kiddos, because I feel like moms have that like more of the mental health support and like groups and things like that, but not a whole lot of how can you just be present and kind of develop an
Connected
emotionally connected
relationship.
relationship with your kiddo, and in the same time just having fun and like not making it as like a job, but more of like on a daily day basis. And it applies to any
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah. So I say yes on that. Do it.
I just don't know
Absolutely
where
do
to
it.
start.
That's all right. It'll start to line up. You just keep that vision of, what you're thinking and start making notes.
Okay.
Like, oh, I did this with him today and this made
Yes.
me, oh,
Yes.
because it's all those kind of things that you can do even just in a group circle
Yes.
where you're like this week, let's all try this.
Okay.
And then report back in 2 weeks. Like, yeah, I did this and this didn't work for me, but this did.
Okay.
It's all about connection, which
Yes.
is the one thing that I do in the hypnobirthing. The reason we do the deep dive into the power centers
Mm-hmm.
is because if you can start connecting spiritually and intuition wise, and finding your voice, and you're connected with your voice, and then you're in your heart center, like all of those things that we use for labor and birth are how we're going to parent our kid.
Yes.
Because we have all the answers inside. Every child is different. So we can't follow a formula or somebody's parenting book, because every baby is different. Every experience was different. Their soul is different, all of that. But it's our connection within our body that allows us to connect with them on that level. Moms know 100% what's going on with their kid before a doctor does.
Yes.
Right.
Totally
You're
true.
the one that says the pediatrician, nope, totally out of character. Nope, this isn't working. I've got to find another answer. That's why we get answers discovered.
Yes.
Because the relentless part of the mom, right? She's just not going to not find it.
Yeah.
And I wish we had more time earlier to connect with the power centers for ourselves, like just in our regular life before we got pregnant, because it'd be easier if you're pregnant. But it's like we discover that as we're pregnant, and not every birth class has it. It just happens to be that was the download I was given, and it makes sense. And then when I run my life that way, it just
makes sense. Yeah.
It works.
Right.
Yeah. Because we have those tools inside of us. And I think when we lived in villages, we talked about it, and it was, no, figure your kid out.
And I think that's what also it's important to start ingraining in the kiddos too, because it's like we learn these things as adults. And I think that's what the biggest things. How can I teach that to my son too? The words you use has that power to build strong, emotional, and mindful kiddos.
Absolutely. And you're going to be recognizing his gifts way earlier if you're looking at him through that filter, right? Like, who are you as a person? Right. Not what I want you to conform to, but who are you? And, oh, you're sensitive here, but you're super strong here. Yes. How do I develop that connection with you? Oh, God, it's so yummy. Yay. Let's do that. That's exactly it. You're finding your path. That's perfect. So sexy.
Love it.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I'm so glad we finally got to link up. It's taken us a year. I do want to say, when you talked to me, when you called me, you say you were panicked. I heard a concerned mom, but I was outside actually. And I, every once in a while, get very strong impressions about babies. And he was very much a boy to me, but you had said you didn't know. So I kept that to myself. But he kept saying to me, remind her that she's okay. Everything's okay. I'm fine. Remind her of that. And so when you say that I was the one talking, part of that was not me, but you knew everything. You were saying, I feel okay. My body feels. I've checked in with this baby and I feel. And that is the reminder I think all of us need, is if there's nobody else to talk to, you have the answers inside, and you did. And so I just reflected that back. So if you think that I said something magic, I did not. I went back through remember that what we said, what's going to happen at your 36-week appointment, your 37-week appointment, and it's going to start. It was exactly the same. And check in with yourself, because if you needed an induction, you would have felt peace with that decision.
Right.
It would have been like, no, it wouldn't have been an anxious, like, let's get this baby out. It would have been, no, I feel at peace. This is something that needs to happen because of XYZ. You would have felt that.
Right.
You did not.
Yes.
And you were adamant that I'm okay. This baby's okay.
Yes. I was feeling great.
You were just like, I just want the baby
Yeah.
here.
And I remember we talked about it was full moon too. And I love the moon. And I said, I'm just going to walk out there and have a conversation with him and look at the moon and get all that energy. And then now that I mention it, yes, connecting with him, like communicating with him, having that talk with the baby. Because I remember telling him, you know, we're ready. I'm ready. And we're ready for when you're ready. But we can make this, quote, quote, the easier route, or we're going to have a lot of people telling us what to do. So we have to choose. Like, it's your time to choose which way you want to go. And I remember telling him that. And, you know, next day we were delivering. So words have that power.
Absolutely. And does it matter if you're fingertip? No. Does it matter if you're super tight and your cervix is clear up into your butt? It does not matter.
It doesn't
because
matter. When
the timing is right and that little baby sends out the protein, like the lungs are ready, I'm ready, whatever, it hits your head, those sensors go open up, you know, they're already open on your uterus, like it starts.
Yes.
And we have to trust that when that timing comes together, it's the time. It's the time.
It is. It can take a week. It can take hours. It's going to be the way they want it to be.
Absolutely, because it's their timeline.
It is.
So good. Thank you, Andrea, for being here. I'm so excited. Thank you for your words of wisdom, too, for the families, because that's important that they take the time to relax those first 3 months and let everything else go. Because it does. I remember looking at my baby, she looks different than she did yesterday. It goes so fast.
It does.
It goes so fast. Okay, well, we'll be expecting the second story soon, whenever you want to do that. You know, take your time, but everybody should send Juan a little note, like whenever that other baby wants to show up, we're ready. All right, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
We will. Thank you, here. Take care.
Bye. Thanks for joining us today. And remember, it's your body, your choice, and finding your voice is your power. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us in all the places, and go to birtheducationcenter.com for our blog and more online education classes. And we'll see you next week.